The following is an AZPM original production.
For AZPM, I'm Mark McLemore, and this is Arizona Spotlight. Coming up, stories about hope and renewal, and the possibility of taking chances in your own favor. Poet Liza Porter, storyteller Carmelene Siani, photographer Tim H. Murphy. Those stories are next on Arizona Spotlight. The Substack, called In a Flash, is a magazine for creative nonfiction. They specialize in publishing stories of 500 words or less from writers around the world. In March, they chose to feature an essay by Liza Porter, an author and poet who calls Tucson home. In response to the one-word prompt rhythm, she wrote the following piece. And now here is Liza Porter with a reading.
And what about the way hope can suddenly appear out of nowhere, outside the kitchen window? A sparrow's nest falling to the ground. The tiny eggs you know are there somewhere, broken, and you can't see, but maybe the mother bird is teaching its babies to fly right now, or to sing. That's when you can't ignore it. It's the longing that brings it on. The mourning doves coo louder than usual if you wait for the Air Force jets to stop their ear-numbing circles over the valley. And those other birds whose songs you don't recognize, can't name, take for granted. It doesn't matter that you can't call them by their names. What's important is the songs. You can't deny it any longer. Yearning seems to be the only way to know everything else. Despair, tears falling in yellow blossoms from the Palo Verde tree in a violent wind. Hope, the new seed sprouting in damp earth. The yearning always comes before the other. Take the way a fire truck siren lifts you right up out of your car on Broadway as it roars down the wrong side of the street, honking and screeching, and all the cars stop. And it's rush hour, and you love the way all the cars stop, everyone pulling together for once. For one moment on Broadway in the middle of rush hour, all the drivers quit what they're doing. The petty cell phone arguments, the right-wing talk shows, the so-called rock and roll drowning the day's crises, the bad news clips, one after another, it seems. Then someone else's bad luck makes the whole street pause. You hope they're all saying a prayer that no one is hurt, that help will get there in time. You hope they're not all just annoyed by the slowing down, that damn truck messing with their important plans, the mall where they can buy more things no one really needs, the gym, the bar. That's when you hear all the car stereos tuned to the same station, some throwback DJ on community radio dropping the needle onto an album. For Every Man, or Imagine, or even Beyonce's Freedom. And everyone starts to sing. Every person in every car knows the lyrics, beginning to end. When you look around, you can see their lips moving in unison through the tinted windows of their air-conditioned SUVs. Even the lawyers in their tailor-made suits sing. Even the surly teenagers wearing dog collars and all black. Even the sleeping babies latched into car seats wake up and sing at the top of their lungs as the traffic starts moving again.
Liza Porter's most recent book of poetry is called Del Bach, available from Finishing Line Press. There's something very powerful about a single voice sharing a true story. It gives a chance for the storyteller to let their personality shine and forge new connections with anyone who listens. In support of this important community tradition, Arizona Spotlight is featuring a different storyteller on the third Thursday of each month. Here's Tony Paniagua to introduce our special guest.
Thank you, Mark. This month's storyteller is octogenarian Carmelene Siani, a published freelance writer who also enjoys crocheting Afghan patterns. Many Tucsonans may be familiar with her name or seen her in photographs. Carmelene Siani was on Arizona Spotlight 3 years ago to talk about being included in a book by Tucson-based photographer Jade Beal. Siani was delighted to return as a storyteller, although she had to choose from one of her many notable moments in her life.
My name's Carmelene Siani, and my story is Up, Up, and Away. I'd been out for yet another meeting. When I walked back into my office, I closed the door, pulled the blinds down, and went over to my desk. My brain ached from too many agendas, too many board minutes, and too much strategizing. I slumped down into my chair, faced my desk, and oh God, I'd been having this feeling for about a year. No, no, no! Everything inside of me screamed I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to go to any more stupid meetings or corporate lunches. I didn't want to dress right, carry a calendar the size of a phone book, answer over 100 emails a day, develop any more programs, run any more campaigns, or meet any more damn people. More than anything, I did not want to keep burying myself in a corporate identity. I was burned out, exhausted, flat out of ideas, solutions, and motivation. And I was terrified. Recently divorced, I needed that job. I didn't have a husband to pick up the slack anymore, pay the mortgage anymore, or even pick me up from work and take me out for a drink anymore. I was alone, my sole support, and I needed this job. I looked at my office door to be sure it was locked, put my arms kindergarten style on my desk, buried my face down into them, and sobbed. Confused, trapped, and desperate, I sobbed. What was I to do? It's funny how sometimes two things can happen at once. Through my tears and the sobbing, a vivid scene began to emerge from behind my closed and swollen eyelids. In the scene, I was standing on the edge of a very high cliff. The air was cool and crisp, and the wind was blowing through my hair. The world was spread out before me, and I could see all the way to the horizon. I could even see its strangely beckoning curve. I was mesmerized. At the same time, I had the overwhelming feeling that what I was seeing was not merely the physical world as I knew it, the world with forests, fields, mountains, and oceans, but another world, a special world, a world full of opportunity. I cast my eyes this way and that and couldn't erase the feeling that wherever they landed, a world, that world, full of opportunity, was at my feet. All I had to do to get there was step off the cliff. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't make the leap. Moving slowly, I took a step back away from the world before me. The wind fell, my hair stopped blowing, and as I continued moving away from the cliff and back toward my desk, back toward my 401k, my responsibility, my salary, and my future with the corporation, the world of opportunity that had been spread out before me grew smaller and smaller before my eyes. Soon I was so far back I couldn't see that world at all. In fact, I couldn't even back up anymore. I had backed up right into a wall. I raised my head from my kindergarten folded arms, feeling as if I had been in a deep sleep, and then in my sleep I'd had a profound dream. I felt a little drugged, but I also felt the truth of what had been presented to me, and I knew what I had to do to get it. I got up from my desk, wiped the tears from my eyes, walked down the hall, knocked on the CEO's door, and went in. I just had a dream. A dream, he said? Yeah. And I'm giving you notice. Epilogue. I quit that job. I never doubted that it was the right thing. The next job I had was sitting naked on a pillow in a room full of art students while I modeled for them. I earned $10 an hour, and the irony of going from everything I had in my corporate life to being naked on a pillow wasn't lost on me. For the next 30 years, up until COVID, in fact, I had worked at every part-time job, every opportunity that came my way. I sang and played cocktail piano, owned my own secondhand store, worked in an antique mall, made and sold watercolors, wrote and published stories, made rag rugs, and even transcribed police interviews. But more than anything else, that day in my office, I had jumped off a cliff and learned something about myself that no one could take away from me. I had learned that I could fly. My motto in life? Up, up, and away.
After telling us her story, we were curious to find out more about Carmelene Siani, so we continued the conversation in the studio. I begin by wanting to know more about her early years.
I was born in the Italian ghetto in South Philly a long time ago. And when my father came back from the war, he said, "We're getting out of this place. There's no jobs for us. We're going to go to California," where he wanted to be a radio announcer.
Wow. So how long were you in California, and then when
I
did
was
you-
raised in California, and then I got married. And I grew up, went to school there, high school, and then I met a man and married him. And he and I moved to Tucson with our kids, and I've been in Tucson since 1970.
And how many children did you have?
3 daughters.
Can I ask you how long you were married the first time, or
30 years the first time, 19 years the second time, and 12 years now this time.
And then what about the whole storytelling and the artistic? What inspires you to do this?
The storytelling, how did that start? Oh, I was a model for Jade Bial. I was a photographer's model for her. And she came for an interview with Mark McLemore, and she brought me with her. And after the interview, like 2 years later, Mark emails me and says, "How would you like to tell a story?" Well, obviously, I grew up telling stories. It's the way we talk to each other in my family. So some people are born storytellers. Some Italians are born storytellers.
And what's the biggest satisfaction that you get out of telling stories and sharing them?
The audience. You tell something that happened in your life, and somebody in the audience needs to hear exactly what you're saying. And they bring it out of you, the audience. Obviously, I'm not afraid of microphones. I've been naked on a pillow a lot in my life. So the microphone doesn't bother me, or the performing doesn't bother me, but that audience. I know why my father wanted to be an announcer, and I know why people want to be actors.
You've had a very exciting life. Is there anything that you still haven't done at the age of your 80?
I'm 83. No, I don't have a bucket list. No. And I have an exciting life because I quit that job. It would not have been exciting. I would have had much more money, but I don't think it would have been exciting.
Carmelene Siani's father did not find a radio job in California, so he worked in a pizza restaurant and eventually became a salesman. Here in Tucson, whether on stage, the radio, or elsewhere, Siani says she's open to what comes her way, just like her life. To find the previous interview with Carmelene Siani and photographer Jade Bial, we'll have a link on our website. For Arizona Spotlight, I'm Tony Paniagua.
Next, meet a photographer who had to make some adjustments to make sure his golden years became just that. For those who can afford retirement before age 60, having the time and the health to enjoy your favorite pursuits can be a dream come true. Tim H. Murphy is a local artist whose retirement plans did not go as he anticipated, but it led Murphy to forge a new career that has brought him into connection with an ancient tradition from a culture he knew nothing about.
So I'll start this call like I start every call. Apologies about the voice.
Tim, we all face a myriad of challenges in life. Some of them we can't hide, and some we can. I just want you to know that you're talking to a friend, so you take your time. The most important thing is that you're comfortable and that you express yourself the way you want to express yourself. For people who are going to be meeting you for the first time through this interview, what do you want them to know most about yourself, Tim?
I would say that I have embarked on what I call an Act 2 that was completely unplanned, and I have flourished in the face of adversity or flourished in the face of a disability.
Well, when did your Act 2 start? What was your age?
It's about 58 years old. It's about 13 years ago.
Okay.
And it's with this neurological condition typically manifests. So I was born with it, but it did not manifest, thank God, till my late 50s.
What is it called? Does it have a name?
It's called hereditary spastic paresis.
I know John Lennon once famously said, "Life is what happens while you're making other plans."
Love that song.
Yeah, it's a great one. So tell us about your plans, Tim, and how they changed.
Well, my plans were to play golf in my golden years in Arizona and Ireland, where my wife and I had spent a lot of time on holidays. And I started that a bit after I retired from 30 years at American Express, playing here in Arizona, mostly Scottsdale, and in Ireland. But my condition got the better of me. I completely lost my balance. So golf was out of the question. Also was a very avid road cyclist, and I hadn't quit, but I kept falling off my bike, and my poor knees and elbows got chewed up, and also enjoyed hiking in the desert here, and so I had to quit those pursuits. When I realized I couldn't do that anymore, I went into a funk. After moping around the house for a while and going through all the traditional stages of grief, my wife suggested that I take up an old avocation, and that was photography.
I've been to your website and I've seen samples of your work, and they're striking. In fact, there's a painting-like quality to a lot of your photographs. And I actually thought they were paintings when I saw small thumbnails of some of your powwow portraits.
When I realized that I couldn't golf anymore, and I started investigating photography again, in addition to heading down to Costco and buying the best Nikon they had, I consumed hours and hours of content on YouTube. And I studied photographers, I studied composition, I studied color theory, I studied painters. So to hear you make that comment about looking like paintings makes me very happy.
Well, first of all, you make it clear on your webpage that you love photographing Ireland, and you have found an incredible fascination with photographing powwow dancers from the indigenous people of the Southwest. How is it that you went to your first powwow and that connection made itself felt?
I am a very good friend, and I should use him in the past since he's a dear friend. I knew from golfing with him that Bill danced in powwows, and he'd been doing it for years. And after shooting countless sunrises and sunsets here in Arizona, I wanted to branch out. And I remembered that Bill was a powwow dancer. So I asked Bill to take me to a powwow so I could photograph it. Bill had me come to his house, and Bill answers the door like I'd never seen him before. He had face paint on and a full-on powwow dance outfit. He brought me out back and sat me down, and we talked about powwow protocol, the Native American history, the culture. He danced a bit for me, and it dawned on me that Bill was ensuring that I respected what I was about to see. And I emphasize that word intentionally because to me, a lot of the Native American culture is about respect. Bill took me to my first powwow, I think it was back in 2016, and I photographed it. And I have to tell you, I was stupefied by what I saw. It was absolutely beautiful, stunning, beautiful people, the culture, the dance outfits, the way they danced. I was fascinated by it. And I brought that Nikon I told you about and one of the kit lenses that I had. And I got home And I looked at what I had. It was colorful. It was what I saw, but it was incredibly uninspiring. To me, they were pictures versus photographs. A picture just documented the fact that I was there, and it documented the fact that a powwow occurred. It didn't move me at all. So Bill invited me to another one, and I thought, I'll bring you a telephoto lens. I zoomed in on the dancers' faces. That's where the spark happened. The photographs of the dancers that showed the dignity, the pride, and the grace. I filled the frame with the dancer's face. That was more powerful, and the reaction that I got and that I get today when I show these photos that are zoomed in, the portraits, the face, far more striking than just documented the fact, and I show several powwow dancers in full.
Well, how do you go about asking and committing to the relationship between photographer and subject?
I have shared them on social media and been contacted by the dancers' families, and they have absolutely loved the images, and I've given them, not sold, but given them, whether it's print or media, and for them to get professional quality, the dramatic images that you're speaking about, they absolutely eat it up. And the center image of by Exhibit at the Gambit is a dancer that's very recognized in the community, but I approached him and I asked him, and he gave me an interesting talk about being happy to share his portrait as long as I did it with respect. So we talked about how I portrayed him and his fellow powwow dancers.
We have a link to Tim Murphy's webpage and some samples of his work on the Spotlight page at azpm.org. Thank you for listening to Arizona Spotlight. This show is a production of AZPM. The production engineer is Jim Blackwood. I'm producer and host Mark McLemore.
AZPM podcasts are made possible in part by donations from listeners like you. Learn more at support.azpm.org. Thank you.